up for war, don't get it mixed up. I come in peace, kid. I'm bringing commentary and the new releases. I put them hours in to get prepared now. We play on expert level, don't be scared now. I'ma destroy you when I'm forced, I can tear it down. If you ain't tuned into the channel, keep your head down. Cut the fix up with some Xbox babies, put the switch up. See me gearing up for war, don't get it mixed up. I come in peace, kid. I'm bringing commentary and the new releases. I put them hours in to get prepared now. We play on expert level, don't be scared now. I'ma destroy you when I'm forced, I can tear it down. If you ain't tuned into the channel, keep your head down.
Yo, thank you guys for joining us. Welcome to The Fix. I'm Infinite Umbra. You all are joined with me and my boy Daniel McG.
Hello.
And we are here with the illustrious Hex Briefius merger acquisitionist Luke Steele. It sounds like, Luke, your name sounds like a superhero. What's up, Luke?
I know, yeah, it's either that or a porn star. It's kind of
the modern
bit of both.
Superhero.
Yeah, the modern. Yeah, they're the real superheroes.
You have no idea. I've had people actually. I was talking about it the other day, and I said, "Man, we got Luke Steele joining us." They were like, "Who? Lexington Steele?" I'm like, "No."
Wow, you pulled that name out real fast. You got a history here.
They said it, not me. Although I do know the melanated brother, yes, but I'm aware of his work. But anyway, yeah, man, happy to have you with us tonight, brother, because this thank you. Because, I mean, a lot of us get online and we talk like we're armchair M&A lawyers and stuff. We don't know what we're talking about, you know what I mean? And I freely admit that I'm, one of them. So, although I try not to go into specifics of that nature, I always try to talk off what I feel is just common sense. And typically I point to, well, like, for instance, there was a topic that was breached and it said Brad Smith, he had said some kind of strong worded words, and I'll get to that in a moment once we get to that topic. And I said, hey, they were like, oh, what is the CMA going to do? How are they going to respond to this? And I'm like, for lack of better words, excuse my language, I'm not going to curse, but I was just like, they're not going to do a thing. What are they going to do? Like we're going to rule against you on everything you do now. They can't do that, so it's not, what can they do? Nothing. So I just kind of talk from common sense when it comes to that. But I did see you, Luke, kind of in real time correcting a lot of misconceptions. How did that feel for you on that situation?
I don't know, man. Like, it's difficult because there's it's really great that, in a way, and I know this sounds a bit odd, but like this whole the whole merger stuff has been great because it kind of exposes people to things that I do in my work, and it's that rare conflation of something you do as a hobby, which is for me is gaming, right, and then something I do as my profession. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
But the problem is that people then start to talk about things as if they have some experience or know what they're talking about.
All of a sudden, everyone's a lawyer.
And like, there's no issue when people just give their opinion on stuff, right? Like you do, Umbra, right? You from a common sense perspective, you're not out here trying to proclaim that the CMA's procedure is X, Y, or Z, or that you can, they can do this and they can do that.
Right.
But online, you get a lot of people who do that, who say things, and I just read it and I just kind of, there's just a huge temptation to be like, you're just totally fucking wrong, like, sorry for the language. You know what I mean? Like,
did you want to, just for the anyone in the audience who doesn't necessarily know who you are, did you want to give just a brief explanation of sort of your history with the subject?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm a mergers and acquisitions corporate / investment funds lawyer. So my main practice is M&A and private equity, and I engage in other various bits of corporate law as well, like company restructurings and joint ventures and investment funds. And I've done that for like 7 years, right? So it's what I do, and
a fair bit of experience there.
A fair bit of experience. I've worked on some really, really interesting and big transactions, obviously most of which I can't say anything about, but so I've got good experience. I've done I guess relevant for this subject is that I've done applications and worked with clients in respect of competition applications and notifications for their particular mergers, right? So I've had experience of the CMA and other competition regulators as well, and have a good knowledge of that entire area because I've done it. So I guess when all of this happened, like, it was quite an interesting thing for me to do. And I should say I'm based out of the UK as well, so obviously the CMA and the UK's competition regime is kind of my wheelhouse.
Right.
I have knowledge of the US one, but in the same way that Hoglo would not be able to tell you exactly,
Right.
about the CMA and everything to do with the CMA and UK competition law, I equally could not do the same.
So
for US law, but
so if you've been doing this for 7 years, that means that you've been doing this like pre-Brexit, right? So you sort of have seen. Yeah. So here's something just that I've been confused about. The CMA, did that exist before Brexit? Was it just a separate entity that gained more power afterwards, or how does this work exactly?
Yeah, it existed before Brexit. So the CMA was formed in the early-ish 2010s, and it kind of existed side by side with the Commission, the EU Commission. Interestingly, they still, even when the UK was part of the EU, the CMA still operated, but in a sense of reviewing mergers on its own. It didn't fall under the purview of the EU, like for every member state, Spain, Portugal, etc. The Commission effectively does the review on their behalf, right? If you're in the EU. That wasn't the case for the UK, so the CMA existed side by side. But what you would find is that they would be, for the most part, in lockstep in terms of their decisions. They wouldn't diverge from each other much, if ever. There were times that they did diverge, but not they weren't common, right? So it did exist pre-Brexit, and now it exists post-Brexit. So nothing much has changed, I guess, in terms of how they do decisions or the criteria on which they analyze mergers or acquisitions, but they're kind of guided now more by their own management, right? As in, they're more of a free spirit, really. So
so I do want to cover more of that, but we'll get to that in a moment. For now, I want to cover the lighter topics, and then we'll wrap it up by going to that at the end. And everybody, thank you all for joining us. I just want to say, like I've said it before on past shows, and our aim here is to talk about a lot of different subjects, be it in whatever form of media it is, be it gaming, be it anime, be it movies, be it TV. We want to cover everything that interests us, and because like you all, we're not just one simple thing. We like a lot of things, but we also want to keep it succinct. We don't want to keep you guys here forever. Some shows can go on and on and on, and I'm trying to keep it to within an hour and a half, 2 hours at max, for us and you guys, because you got other things you got to do, and we all understand that. So I just want to give a shout out to everybody really quick, and then I'll let Danny start presenting some of these news blurbs before we move on to the next subject. So I want to give a love and shout out to Green Monad, is our mod. What's up, brother? Ponty, I see you. Telos Ray Sycamore, Decado, Truly, my boy, what's up? Abdel, Sarcastic Taurus. I didn't think you were going to show up like that. All right, I see you. What is it? Smooth Jams, huh? Said it sounds like my mom's playlist. C Steph.
Oh, no.
I don't know if that's a good thing or not. C Steph, what's up? I almost said your name, Danny. I'm like, oh, but you're in the show. Palpy.
Hey, I'm glad to be seen.
in silent cipher. I see you too, Mac. What's up, Mac Bound? And Mr. Benjamin, thanks for the sub too. I just saw that pop up a while ago. Oh, what is it? Jam Pack Sam. It's my first time seeing you, brother. Hello. Welcome to the show, and thank you all for being here with us. Are you not entertained? Anyway, I see that, Seth. Erase it. So yeah. Danny, go ahead and please lead us into some of the news blurbs right here.
Absolutely. We just got a couple of small ones here that we want to get through. I think we'll go in release order. So the first one would be Jedi Survivor. We got some new we got the review scores of those dropping, and it's looking pretty good, guys. It's looking like it's going to be exactly the hit I think we all thought it would be. Mm-hmm. It's sitting in at 86 on Metacritic right now. And the lowest one I can find for it is a 60. So it is in the ballpark.
Who gave it a 60, by the way? I want to know that.
It's called We Got This Covered.
See,
I've never heard of them before.
And that's the thing I wanted to, exactly. And I thought you were going to say that. When I see scores like that for what is supposed to be kind of a major release, and all the other scores are just kind of like 8s, 9s, 10s. I get weary when I see stuff like that. A 60.
Yeah. Well, but even the 60 leaves it in just like the mixed category. There are 0 negative reviews for it currently.
That's
good.
I
can find.
And an 86 overall is great. I'm just saying.
It's great. I'm sure they're happy
with
with that.
Yeah. Because I see that and I think, are they trying to make a name for themselves? But
it's possible.
They'll tell us no. No, we thought blah, 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 blah. But anyway, though, that's interesting. So I see like VGC gave it a 10 out of 10. You have IGN gave it a 9 out of 10. And what's the GameSpot gave it an 8 out of 10. I've heard some things about it, some negatives. I heard the PC port is particularly trashy right now. Did you guys hear about that?
I heard yes. So I saw in some of the pre-release build that it was having some real frame drop issues, and it was not being great on that front. I've since heard that a lot of that has been fixed with the day one patch, but it's not like perfect by any means. But I don't necessarily think anyone was expecting perfection. So
I got a question though for you, for both of you. Do you feel, because nowadays especially, it seems like we kind of get these beta games that we kind of beta test before they give us an actual patch or something. What do you guys feel about that? Luke, I'll start with you for this. What do you feel about that? Do you feel like it's a bit of a disservice to us as gamers and that they should be releasing full, patch-free, at least largely patch-free games at launch?
Yeah, I think it's quite frustrating. I mean, I must admit, for Survivor, for example, so I game a lot on PC. Mm-hmm. That's, kind of PCMR in that way, albeit I have every other console as well. But anyway, so I've got Survivor preloaded on PC, but as Daniel said, the PC performance is atrocious, apparently. So even a 4090, which is what I'm rocking, by the way. Get that plug in.
Little flex right there. Yeah, a little flex. We heard it.
All right.
Even that can't maintain 60 FPS at 4K, which is ridiculous, right? That's just absolutely ridiculous. It's a great looking game, but there's no way that card shouldn't be able to maintain that. So there's apparently real problems there, and I think PC ports in the last kind of 5-6 months longer either range from being okay to just terrible day one, not good at all. There's only been a few that have actually been quite good, but it's a trend not only in that space but also in the console space as well, where you have these games that release that they're just even with a day one patch, they're not particularly performant. Like, they're not what you would expect a day one release to be, or that I think we should demand as gamers, right? We should want kind of an acceptable standard level for these games. So it's disappointing. I know that this game has some console performance issues as well. I think AGC did a tweet like an hour or two ago, and he just basically said it's a great game, but there's horrible issues across any platform that you play on, which isn't like, that's not what you want to hear. And I'm quite surprised almost that the reviews have been so positive in spite of the performance. So the game must, for it to get like, it must be incredible in my head to get an 86, but apparently have like all of these really bad performance issues.
Well, I do think that a lot of reviewers, because they are reviewing pre-launch, I think that they don't necessarily take performance as much into account as they maybe should.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think maybe they just assume that, look, you'll get a day one patch and it'll be better, so we'll kind of.
Yeah, which brings it back to the conversation of like, we should be expecting more. Like, I think that the game should probably run at the best state that it's going to run at by the time you send it to the reviewers. Like that would make sense to me as a person who does not make video games. But yeah, it's very strange. Very strange.
Yeah, no, it is. But that aside, hopefully they get that fixed. I know they've talked about patches already. I just and the thing also, you got to think about the pedigree of the studio behind it. Respawn is
for sure
top notch. So you kind of expect more than to have like these type of issues at launch. Personally,
yeah. What's your hype level for the game, just like in general? Are you a Star Wars man?
Are you talking about to me or to Luke?
Oh, yes, and both.
Well, mine is, I'm super hyped. I'm at I would say a 9 out of 10. I have too many things to play right now though, so it's kind of sad because some games are going to get sacrificed right now. I got the Ghostwire Tokyo I've been playing, which I have been loving. And then I got the Benedict Fox that released today, which I just started on. It didn't really do anything. And now we got that happening. And then May 2nd, rather, you got Redfall. I don't think I'm going to be able to get through all these in time. I'm going to have to.
And then Zelda, and then it's just a snowball. Yeah, it's just a snowball for the rest of the year, it looks like.
Yeah. Now, this is probably going to take priority. I will say that. This is probably going to take priority and probably put those to the burner. But, yeah, no, I'm really excited, man. I love the first game. I thought I felt bad that it felt like it was cheated, that it wasn't added to the Game of the Year nominations and such. I know, I guess it missed that deadline, but it just felt.
I think it was some people's Game of the Years. It just didn't show up on Keeley's.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was like Kind of Funny's Game of the Year, or like maybe IGN's.
You might be right.
It was one of those bigger ones.
Yeah, you might be right. I personally didn't look to those. I always think of the VGAs specifically. I guess to get Keeley's credit, he's kind of pull that little, I guess, drawing that little niche for himself where, hey, we're thinking of the.
I thought you were going to say wool over our eyes.
That too. What about you, Luke, though? How excited are you for this?
I'm kind of like half and half because I really love the first game, albeit it took me a while to enjoy the first game because when I heard that Respawn were making it and then that Stig Asmussen was directing it, in my head, and certainly for the first level, the impression I got was this was going to be like, Star Wars, Uncharted / God of War, right? That kind of game. And actually, it's not that kind of game. It's more like a Metroidvania with some Souls combat. So it took me a while to warm to it because my expectation was something else. But for this one, that obviously that's not an issue because I know what I'm going to get. But the problem is that the PC performance stuff is just not good. So that really deflates my hype. I'll see what it's like with the day one patch. See how much that improves performance. But if it's not to a good level, then I've still got a complete RE4 remake. I'm still playing Dead Space remake. Like, I want to get through those. I'm really enjoying those. So I'll just go back to them.
Games this year.
I've got to get back to that too. I forgot about Dead Space. I played that and got to like the second or third chapter and we moved on to another game.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, the whole talk of no games is greatly exaggerated because man,
definitely,
I'm drowning over here. But and Danny, your hype levels. I mean, you got to be excited as we are.
I am, but I think I'm kind of closer to Luke on this one.
Yeah.
Because I'm a really big Star Wars fan. Like, I watch all the movies, watch pretty much all the shows. I missed Resistance, and I got to go back and watch Rebels because I missed that at the time.
Yeah.
But now it's like a super important show, so I got to go back and watch it. But yeah, I love Star Wars. I've been a big fan of it forever. But I'm the odd man out in that I didn't really like the first game. I didn't. Yeah, it was just. It's not that the game was bad. It was just like really clunky. Like not having fast travel and just trying to get anywhere on that map was really awkward. Also, I'm just like. This is the one that people always disagree with me on. I also just like don't really like Cameron Monaghan as an actor. I don't think he does a great job. I didn't like him in.
That, didn't you? You told me.
I know. I don't
that.
like him in Gotham. I don't like him in not Schitt's Creek. What is it? Shameless. I have yet to see him in something that I like, and you know, I do think he's a really nice guy. I've seen him in interviews and he seems great, but I'm just not a fan of his work. So I don't know. I'm definitely gonna end up playing this one. It might not be like a day one sort of situation, but it's definitely one that is on my radar.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the reviews and stuff, it seems like this is an improvement over the first game.
For sure.
So maybe that'll be the case. I see now we can ride on animals and creatures and things of that nature. Also, I know they got the fast travel thing that you were talking about. They have that now, and I guess it's because it's largely a more open kind of world hub thing than it was in the first game comparatively. So
yeah, and that definitely has me excited.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the things that I didn't really care for it, was I didn't feel like the Metroidvania aspect of it really worked particularly well, especially with the fast travel. It's just like kind of awkward. But I don't know. I am looking forward to it. Or bare minimum, I will play it.
Yeah, well there you go. Shining review. Are you looking forward to it? I will play it.
I will play it. That is where I'm at. Hey, look, you know what? Honestly,
that is a game that you can play.
Yeah,
sure.
Honestly though, in a year like this, that is a pretty big compliment because there are so many
games. Yeah, I guess so.
But I think that brings us to the next game, if you guys are ready.
Absolutely.
Which is Armored Core got a gameplay trailer reveal sort of situation. And this one I am much more excited for.
Now, let me ask you, have you all ever played any of the other past Armored Core games?
I have.
So when you see this here and you see this from Software, first off, when I saw from Software and I learned that they were the ones behind it, my hype levels before I was like, but then I saw them on it and I was like, oh, you know, I actually really love and have come to appreciate from Software so much. But I was wondering, like, how are they going to do action on this? Because I start thinking of their Souls games, you know, the style they do. I'm like, I wonder how that's going to transition and work in this. Like, what are they going to bring that's unique to it? And seeing the gameplay today, man, I was like, damn, that looks really good. Personally. I mean,
it does.
Visually, it looks a bit better than their other games, too. To me, I don't know.
See, okay, that... for me, I think it's a little bit of a step back from, like, Elden Ring in terms of just, like... And it may have been... I was streaming it, like, on my phone, so I don't know, maybe that was why. Yeah. But it didn't look quite as good to me. Like, it didn't look quite as crisp. I don't know what that was about. I think it's going to be a really great game, and I think I'm going to love it. And if you're a fan of the older games, I think you're going to love it too. I worry that people coming to this game are going to expect it to be something else, because people are going to come from it, because Armored Core is from, at this point, a different generation. It's from the before times. So I think there's going to be a lot of people.
The before times.
Yes. Worlds beyond number.
Right.
I think there's going to be a lot of people who come to this and they're going to be expecting it to be Elden Ring or Dark Souls or something like that. They're going to be expecting sort of that style of game, and I don't think that, and I don't think that's what this is shaping up to look like. Especially looking at the gameplay, it looks like it's very much more action heavy. Remembering back to the old games, there's probably going to be quite a bit of, like, you know, min-maxing and like messing around with menus and stuff like that. There's going to be a lot of that just doesn't exist in Souls games, and so I think it is going to appeal to a very different audience from those games.
Yeah.
And so I think Soulsborne people might be coming to this game with wrong expectations, and I worry about that on a certain front. But I'm getting what I want, and that's all that matters.
What about you, Luke? What did it excite you seeing the trailer and everything else? Have you been excited for this?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I'm a filthy, From Software fan. I'll just, them and Kojima, I will just eat up anything that they do. Really, doesn't matter what it is.
So you probably were a Zone of the Enders fan then.
Oh yeah, huge Zone of the Enders fan. Yeah, I was one of the only people who bought Zone of the Enders for Zone of the Enders when it came with the demo of MGS2.
I see.
But yeah, so and I've played Armored Core 2, 3, and 5.
Oh man.
So I've played a few of them in the series, and this one, like, it's definitely Armored Core. No question about that at all. I do think they've tried to introduce, at least from the gameplay trailer, some Souls aspects, in terms of, I guess, that kind of feeling, of high quality big boss battles, stuff like that, and kind of the exploration, and the scale of stuff, which was always present in Armored Core, but I don't, I can't recall it being quite this kind of gigantic. But yeah, I think it just looks great. I mean, it's and I think they're an incredible studio, to have done Elden Ring, so recently, and now be releasing another AAA game.
I agree. That's saying a lot, by the way. That's a good point you just made, because
and we still got that DLC coming.
We do, but you've got a lot of these AAA studios that's putting out games, and it's taking them 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and you got From Software here being this workhorse, like you said, and then knocking out the Elden Ring. And when I played Elden Ring, I had no idea the game would be that large. I'm like, this game is ridiculous.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Yeah,
and then they're making this at the same time, simultaneously. So they whatever the case is, they have their teams split up properly, and they're managing things well.
They do. I think they're on that kind of Insomniac level, right, where they're just super good at delivering games rapid. Respawn are another one, right? They can just, like, they turned out Survivor in 3 years effectively after Fallen Order. So but yeah, From have just kind of ascended to that other level of tier of developer, I think, where they can just put out high quality stuff on a really good pace. Meanwhile, Rocksteady are 8 years from Arkham Knight, so God knows what's going on there. But yeah, so I mean the trailer looks amazing. It looks really, really good. I thought visually it was really nice as well. Obviously it's not as astonishing in terms of art direction as Elden Ring, but then it's a mech game, so there's only so much they can do with that. But yeah, I can't wait for it, and it just adds to another it's another game, another potentially game of the year contender in a year full of them, really. So
absolutely,
yeah, it's definitely going to be on my short list for game of the year. Like, I can already feel that. My only other concern for it, other than people thinking that it's going to be a different kind of game, is that I wonder, because it's been so long since like a previous Armored Core game, I wonder if the 6 is going to like throw people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're going to be like, I'm not going to understand the story. And like, you don't really have to worry about that at all, of course. But, there's going to be some people, I think, who that might be a little bit of a turnoff. So I almost wonder if they should have done like a more of a hard reboot. But
that's a fair point.
I guess it doesn't matter.
They do have a sub name for it. What is it?
Fires of
Rubicon.
Yeah.
So they do have that, I guess. The kind of
I mean, I guess when I saw the name, I just didn't understand why they didn't just drop the 6 and just call it Armored Core Fires of Rubicon. Because the 6 is great if you're a fan of the franchise, but it's kind of irrelevant, it being in the lineage of Armored Core, and I think Dan, you're probably right in that, like, maybe it will do it a disservice to people, because they'll see it's From Software and be like, oh, that's cool, and then they'll see it's Armored Core 6 and be like, oh, can I buy this? Like, will I know what's happening?
It's a little intimidating. Yeah,
it's a little intimidating.
Yeah. So this is the first game in the series since Verdict Day, which came out in 2013. So this has literally been it's been 10 years.
It's what
So that's pretty dope that they, I'm glad, people like, or at least studios and developers like Bandai Namco, they don't just let all their IP just go to the wayside like a Konami or something like that. So that is good.
Yeah.
This is one of the older gaming staples right here. So I'm happy to see it come back. And I think it's going to be good, man. Did you all see that special not collectors, but the special edition that you can get with the statue and everything like that?
Oh, what's the statue?
I think it's a mech, and I think it's like what, $300 for it or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think there's like 2 versions. So I think there's like there's one that has like the mech on a kind of very basic stand, and then there's I think it's a $400 version one, which is like loads of extras, and then the mech is like in a kind of a mech hole diorama as well. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, because one is $229.99. One of my buddies bought it already.
Yeah.
Sweet.
He was
Christmas.
very hyped. Yeah,
I want that, but I don't have the money for it.
Yeah.
I cannot justify this purchase.
Same. I can't do it. I mean, I'll definitely be getting, and you're right too. So the bigger mech version with the premium edition, which looks pretty dope, I will admit. Where you get all the books and everything else, like it's almost $500. I think it's $449.99, so $450 plus tax, probably like $470 something. Man, pricey.
Jeez.
Yeah, I'm not that big.
Of course, for that same price over in the Zelda camp, you get what, a fork and a knife? No, it's not a knife. It's a fork and a spoon, isn't it?
Yeah, rock.
They can't give kids a knife. That's not safe.
Don't slander that edition. I've got that on pre-order, man.
Oh, you're in the wrong place, Luke. Danny
No, it's
here.
okay.
Is he a Zelda or / Nintendo hater?
Yeah, just a bit, just a dash, just a dash, But yeah, he says that Nintendo likes to give their fans, like, what is it, rocks and poop? You said, Danny? Sticks
No. I said sticks and rocks, and then the very next trailer that came out for Zelda was him combining sticks and rocks. So I've never felt more justified in my life.
Yeah. I say the newest trailer they had for Zelda actually got me hyped for it, though. It looks really good to me. A lot of people are like,
I'm really excited for Matt Mercer. Yeah. That was my takeaway. Him being Ganon is super cool.
Yeah, man. Hey, so what's the next thing on it? I guess that we kind of exhausted.
It's the big one.
It's the big one. The biggin.
Yes, sir. I assumed you would take the lead on that one. Do we have any other
smaller news that we wanted to kind of get out of the way and mention?
We had some stuff coming out of CinemaCon, if you wanted to touch on that, but honestly, it was nothing particularly exciting.
I know we saw that the Transformers trailer released today.
We did. I don't know if that was CinemaCon, but yeah, we did get the was it Rise of the Beast trailer?
Yeah, it looks pretty dope. I'm surprised by some of the voice casting too.
I think I was one of the only people in my friend group who was like, hell yeah, dude, Beast Wars, because it's like they turned Optimus Primal. That's so dumb. I love it. That was my vibe. I think everyone else was just really against the sort of CGI of that animation, but I think that movie looks good.
The cartoon was actually really, really good. I don't know if it gets enough love, the Beast Wars cartoons, but yeah.
It was weird. It was a weird one for sure for the time period, but I loved it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's because that's by the same people as the Bumblebee Transformers movie, which was, I think, pretty widely considered the good one.
yeah, that was
widely
considered a good one. Yeah.
Here's hoping that they can continue it with my boy Optimus Primal.
Optimus Primal. One
Big
shall
fan.
stand, one shall fall. Luke, if you get me inside some type of contract with somebody, I would appreciate it, brother. It's up
to you. Yeah, we're gonna need a lawyer.
I got you, man.
Yeah. Merge and acquisition me into somebody's business. Yeah. No, but yeah. So I guess it's kind of the bigger news out of the way.
Yes, sir.
Like I said, guys, we're not going to be here too long. We're here for a good time, not for a long time. All right. So
that's my motto in life.
That's what I tell the ladies. I'm here for a good time, not for a long time, baby. If you didn't get yours, I'm sorry for you.
Oh, no.
So we had the big news the other day where the CMA blocked the ABK acquisition, to much of everybody's surprise, and I'm sure our Hooved brothers' delight, going by their responses on Twitter yesterday and today. Man, talk about deflation. You know what's crazy is, like, I've said it before, and I do mean this. Like, I'm a greedy gamer. Like, if I can get all of these games coming to Game Pass, yes, give them. But man, am I tired of talking about this ABK thing? It has been a year and months now. We've been talking about this, and with this thing here happening, it's possible that it could be a 3-year delay. Like that's come on, man. Come on. I don't like ABK that much. Like
no, I don't think anybody does.
Yeah, I don't like him that much. I've gone on record saying it before. Like, I don't play Call of Duty that much. I'll play the single player. That's about it. But it's like, is it worth all of this? It is worth all of that, obviously, business-wise. But man, just as a consumer, it's tiresome. And now that I'm doing the podcasting thing, it's something that I'm often going to be touching on.
And I've seen audiences on multiple podcasts that I've been on being like, "Oh, we're talking about this again," and it's like, yeah, I know. It's like you guys in the audience think that you're tired of hearing it. We are just as tired about talking about it. So
I guess it's a gift and a curse, because it's a gift that keeps on giving, right? Where we might have slower news weeks. But we got the ABK to go over. ABK reliable. We got
the ABK as always. ABK always provides.
Yeah. I mean, the positive too is that we do get a great M&A lawyer like Luke to join us and talk on these things. So that
somebody who actually knows what they're talking about.
Yeah. So the CMA used the claim of protecting innovation and choice in cloud gaming as their reason for blocking this acquisition. They say that didn't sufficiently cover different cloud gaming business models. So my question is, and Luke, you can lead this, and we go, Danny, you can come after him. How nonsensical to you, if nonsensical at all, is it knowing that Microsoft went out of their way to make deals with Steam, Nvidia's GeForce Now, what was the other one, Boosteroid, and Ubisoft, two that we never heard of, by the way, but still, they went out and did these things to allow open-ended cloud options through them, only for them to be like, it's not sufficient enough. How does that feel to you? Like, did that sound odd to you at all, Luke? Did it seem weird?
I think it was surprising. I think throughout this process, my approach has always been, and I've done this when I've read other cases as well. Like, I tend not to ascribe much like mental analysis to the CMA's own analysis. Like, I don't try and kind of pick around at the conclusions they've arrived at. I just kind of take them as they are. But the thing with competition regulators is that you never quite know where they're going to go with stuff. Even when you're on the, you're acting for a client who's trying to, pass a merger and get consent from a regulator. All you can do is you analyze the case internally, analyze what you think you're going to say to the regulator, draft a big application, think about market shares in loads of different markets, and then you kind of speak your truth. You know what I mean? Like you draft something that is that obviously favors your client. But what you get back from the regulator sometimes, takes you by surprise, because you're like, oh, we actually didn't think of that at all, and then actually we don't agree with that at all. Like, that's a really weird way to approach it.
Yeah.
I think probably from my perspective, I think the not necessarily the conclusion that the CMA has arrived at is strange, because I can totally see a world. I don't think it's controversial. Like, I think you have to take some of these things as given. I don't personally think it's that controversial to say that cloud gaming is a distinct sub-market within gaming. I think that's fine. And I don't think it's implausible to say that Microsoft have particular advantages there and can leverage those advantages to make sure that they are, maybe the strongest player in that market. I don't necessarily agree, however, that means that you have to prohibit the merger on that basis. And obviously the CMA disagree on that element. It's interesting that they, obviously they would have known about the deals and stuff, but if you read the report, which I've nearly done, albeit it's just over 400 pages, the full report, so it's quite long. Yeah. the thing that when they talk about the Microsoft Cloud remedy, which are all of these 10-year agreements essentially, they don't feel that those are adequate, essentially, because they feel that because cloud gaming is such a nascent market, 10 years is not long enough, because the market will change so rapidly, or scale so rapidly.
But Luke, that's my point on this, right? And I get that, right? It's a nascent thing, but how do you penalize somebody for that? How do you, as a body of regulators, say 10 years is not? That's a long time. Like, how can you expect more than that, and reasonably more than that? And when somebody is giving you 10 years of a contract to say, hey, we're acquiescing here, you can check us, we're going to make an independent body over there in the UK that is answerable to you guys, they're being above board with all these things. How does that make logical sense to I'm not saying you, I'm just saying in general with them, their argument, how does that make sense that is not enough?
I think it's because it's a nascent market. If you look at like the history of the CMA when they approach nascent markets, they almost always don't they almost always go, actually, you know what the best case scenario is here? The status quo, right? Because in a nascent market, competition is super dynamic. Like, that's just a fact, right? People are kind of coming in and out of the market and gaining particular market shares here and there, and trying to build themselves up and trying to build that market up, and the market rapidly grows. So I guess the justification for the CMA is that, well, the status quo is just fine because nobody has any particular leverage. Microsoft do have a significant amount of leverage, but they feel like the Activision Blizzard stuff would tip them over in terms of the leverage they could have.
Sorry, can I interject a question?
Yeah, no.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. So, ABK, I don't think, other than the content, like the actual physical games, I don't think they add anything to the cloud marketplace. Like, they don't have any of their own cloud things, I believe. So, does that mean that if Microsoft doesn't sit and fight this and win, that any other seemingly large acquisition would run into the same problem of it would benefit them on cloud servers and therefore would hurt this very small market?
Yeah, no, I've seen this question a few times. I've had a few people ask me it, and the answer is no. Okay. Basically, because I think people are worried that, look, okay, maybe this merger doesn't happen, but what if Microsoft then go out and they want to spend some more cash on someone else?
You can say Sega. I think Everborn's already here.
Yeah. What if the CMA just turn around and go, well, you're actually in a position in this market that's so strong that any benefit to you through an acquisition in that market just can't stand, right? I think that's the concern. But I think there's a couple of things around that, which is that, first of all, the CMA can't just investigate any merger, right? They can't, or acquisition. There are thresholds in the UK as to what they can investigate and what they have to be notified about. So one of those, for example, is that whatever you're acquiring has to have over 70 million pounds of turnover in the UK. So if Microsoft go out tomorrow and they buy, I don't know, Asobo and a couple of other studios of that nature, that threshold's never going to be met, because the studios clearly aren't going to make that amount of money in the UK alone. Activision do, clearly, but that's because Activision are absolutely gigantic and they make tons of money everywhere. There's another threshold that you can meet, which is a share of supply, which means that if the merged entity that you end up as kind of either creates a 25% or enhances a 25% share of supply in a particular market, then the CMA can investigate the merger. But just because that's triggered and the CMA then carry out an analysis does not mean that they arrive at the conclusion that, well, you've got a big share of supply, you're enhancing that by X percentage, therefore, and it's a substantial lessening of competition, therefore we're not happy with it, we need to prohibit it or divest, whatever. they don't arrive at that. It's not a given that they'll arrive at that conclusion. That's what I'm trying to say.
Gotcha.
Because no, go ahead.
Sorry. So that clears them for like individual studios. But what if they wanted to say go after a Sega or a smaller publisher that did hit that first monetary threshold? Do you think this would like that same concern would be a problem for, say, a Sega or a Capcom or something of that nature?
Not necessarily, again, because I think the important point to note is that, and you'll see this in the report, the CMA really emphasize that it's not just that Microsoft have particular leverage in this market, you know, in terms of their economies of scale and the network effects of having Azure and, you know, their multi-game subscription services and all that. It's not just that means that a merger, you know, in this case, has a potential anti-competitive effect. They talk very clearly about how significant Activision and Blizzard's games are, right? Their IPs, their big franchises, and they say that, you know, these are of such importance that if Microsoft and they feel like Microsoft will have incentive to foreclose around them in the cloud gaming space, and that's the thing that they're worried about. Yeah, so with Sega,
but they came back saying that the Call of Duty thing was a dead issue. That basically was just around cloud now. So like, how then is that an issue when, again, Microsoft has made all these deals with these different cloud services to allow those games right in there? It's not like they're held back or anything like that. I still don't understand how that's a reasonable claim from them. Also, too, like the whole claim of the forecast of, oh, it could be this in 10 years. What about PlayStation? Right now, they're dominant with VR in the console space. Nobody else has VR. Only them, right? And
that's true.
That's projected right now. It's not projected. It's already an 11 billion market.
It's
VR.
10 times that of cloud.
10 times just about. And it's expected to jump to 9 billion in the next, I think, 10 years, as they say, or something like that. Whereas cloud would jump to 11 billion in that same time frame. How exactly is that not anti-competitive, but cloud gaming here is allegedly that? That to me doesn't add up. And another thing too, just to say, because the argument is, well, this could lead to them having this much or that much of this, and how is that anti-competitive, or at least unfair to us as consumers? Because their argument has been they're doing this for consumers, but I do not see how this benefits consumers for them to block this deal. I do not understand how that's a consumer-friendly thing to do, considering all the moves that Microsoft has made to make it more available and affordable.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a fair criticism to have. You know, I think it's a the way that regulators, you know, assess this in terms of there's kind of like an informed, I call it like an informed crystal ball gazing, right? Because they don't know exactly how a market's going to turn out, and they take all the evidence and all the, you know, documentation that they have in front of them and submissions from various parties, and just go, okay, this is where we've arrived at. I think for the CMA, what they're feeling is, and I don't think you don't have to agree with this. I'm not sure I really agree with it, to be honest, but their feeling is just that, at least from the report, as I said, that because the market changes, because the market's growing so quickly, and because nobody apart from Microsoft has a particular grasp of it at the moment, it would be better just to have the counterfactual, which is Activision Blizzard aren't owned by anyone. They talk a lot about evidence that they've seen that Activision Blizzard would, irrespective of the merger going forward, start to put their games in the cloud, on cloud streaming, for various services. Right. And I think one of the things that they say is, look, Microsoft offered this behavioral remedy to address their concerns, but it didn't aim to restore competition to the level that would have prevailed absent the merger actually happening. And they talk about that the intention of it was to impose obligations on Microsoft themselves to support certain cloud gaming providers using certain business models. And the CMA basically didn't like that because they thought, well, there are different types of cloud gaming business models that might appear. They might be beneficial to consumers in the long run, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
It's a fairly complicated analysis. I'd probably if you're really bored and you want to read the report, just read the section about cloud gaming. It's not that long. It's about, I say it's not that long. It's like 35 pages or something. But,
it's not that long.
That's it?
That's
That's
long.
only 35 pages, huh? Oh.
Yeah.
Well, but it's also 35 pages
It's a
of
bit
legal
more interesting than the other stuff.
Thank you. I guess I'll spend an afternoon doing that.
Yeah, look, I mean, if you're struggling to sleep, just whack that bad boy on, you'll be out like a light. But so yeah, it's like I don't want it to seem like I'm trying to defend the rationale of the CMA, because I think it's people can disagree with this, because there are in any of these, right, apart from a few cases where I think most people would align and say, yeah, that looks like it could be anti-competitive. Most cases that cross any regulator are always kind of like, is it, isn't it? We can think of benefits and negatives to allowing this merger to go through, and I think this is one that, for all of us, we kind of look at it and go, yeah, but we're the consumers in this case. We're the the actual people that are exposed to this every day, and we don't feel like this has any negatives at all for us.
True,
and I think that's entirely fair. Like, it's not, it's not a bad thing to say. It's not an incorrect thing to say.
I think another important thing to note on that is that it's not just the consumers who are saying that, right? Is my good friend Alec, actually, right before the show, he sent me a thing that I think it was NVIDIA, it was GeForce had come out, and they were like, hey, actually, we really want this deal to go through because it's better for us, right? And so I think that there's so I don't know if that, I mean, obviously it's too late to play into the ruling that they've already made, but like, I think if the consumers who you're supposed to be protecting or whatever are saying, hey, we don't think that this is the right choice, and the other parts of the market that you're trying to protect are also like, actually, this would be good for us too. Like, it seems like maybe that wasn't the best case. And I completely understand what you're saying about, like, it kind of feels like they're sort of not hedging their bets. What's the right way to say it? Like, playing it safe, because it's like, this is a market that we don't really know a lot about, and it's, a brand new market for all intents and purposes. And I totally understand that, because I think something that a lot of people, at least that I've been seeing on Twitter, which is not real life, but that I've been seeing on Twitter, have been sort of misinterpreting about this, is that this ruling by the CMA, while I think is probably wrong and honestly kind of stupid, this is not like an attack on Microsoft or, an attack on video games or anything like that. The CMA, correct me if I'm wrong, you would know much better than me. The CMA seems to have a history of, like, specifically in the case of big tech, blocking things for sometimes kind of weak reasoning, just because of seemingly some kind of innate fear of big tech sort of taking over or growing or something to that effect. In the sort of fallout of this, I've heard a lot of UK content creators and even like Jez coming out and saying that it feels like the CMA is trying to prevent the UK from becoming a tech hub, and like it's making it really hard for certain businesses to grow into the UK, and that it's messing up employment and stuff like that. So what I bring this up to say is that I don't want people to think that like the CMA is doing this specifically in order to like protect Sony. They don't really care about Sony, right? They came out 2 months ago and they were like, hey, actually everything that Sony said was wrong and bad and dumb. So, this isn't a case of like Jim Ryan was some 4D chess playing mastermind, right? Because everything that they presented was already thrown out a while ago. This cloud gaming market that they're trying to protect is something that PlayStation is not even a part of. It's something that they are worried about the potential growth of. And so it's not like an attack on Microsoft. They're not doing it because they go home and rock their PlayStation to sleep or whatever. And I've definitely been seeing that sentiment online.
I've got a question I feel is pertinent to you, Luke.
Yeah.
So we're told that the CMA, could you tell us what that stands for, brother?
The Competition and Markets Authority.
I have been told, and I have had it on good word, that it actually means cancel Microsoft's actions. Is there any validity? No, I'm joking.
This is what I've been talking about. This right here.
No, man, I hear you on all of this, and I know it's like a lot of this might go over my head because it's just like my mind is made up, and I'm hearing it, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, let me ask you this, and it's kind of off, I guess, color.
Yeah.
But because I didn't write this down, because I had some of these written down for you specifically to sound more intelligent naturally. Do you feel, and this was another debate that it was had on Twitter, because I know for a fact that America, for instance, we have a lot of corruption here in politics. Be it regulators, be it politicians, whatever it may be, there is a lot of corruption, and people are often bought off. The corporations typically run America because they send their lobbyists in, they buy off whomever they need to buy, they push their agendas and whatever else they need. I don't know the UK like that, but I do know money and corruption is all over the world. It's not just unique to America. Do you think it is at all possible that the CMA has been influenced in some way by somebody? And I asked that because there had been speculation, largely due to Bobby Kotick himself, if you all didn't see this, who not even hinted, more or less flat out said that Lulu Shing, Lena Khan had met with the CMA, which they acknowledged they did meet. And he pointed out that it's illegal, of course, if they talked about the business of this acquisition. Do you think it is at all possible that the FTC is desperate enough to have reached out to the CMA to try to get them to play along with their game of denying Microsoft this acquisition for now, until A, they get what they want, or flat out deny them? Do you think that is at all possible?
Do I think it's possible? That's a loaded question. It's a very loaded question.
Yeah.
So let me go back. So I guess on the Lena Khan stuff, like just to address that point. So Kotick did say that, and the FTC came out and said, yeah, Lena Khan did meet with Sarah. I can't remember her second name, who's the head of the CMA. And that's actually really common for big deals. So there is a significant amount of information sharing between the big three, so the FTC or DOJ, depends on who's doing it in the US at the time,
right?
And the CMA and the EU Commission, right? And they will go back and forth about the stages of their analysis, where they're at, what their likely conclusions are, and sometimes that's influential, as between all three of them. Like they might go, oh, actually, we kind of agree with that. Maybe we'll, let's have a look at that and see if we actually think that, the route that they're going is the correct one. Sometimes it doesn't apply at all, and you get divergence between the three or two of the three, right? Which you probably might have this time, for example. So I think that's right. And I think if the FTC are going there to influence the CMA, which they've denied, and from my knowledge and experience, I kind of probably think I kind of agree with that denial. I think they'll have spoken and they've come to similar conclusions, but the CMA were from the start pretty skeptical of this stuff, even well before the FTC in some regards. So I don't think there's kind of undue influence in that respect from the FTC, which is, I guess, that part of the question hived off.
Yeah.
And then there's the bigger question, which is about UK bureaucracy and government institutions, etc., right, which is actually maybe a little bit of an easier one, which is I think in the US, most kind of quote unquote independent, not really independent. The FTC isn't really independent, first of all, because it's not a strictly
it's not a strictly
a
body, if you will.
Body, yeah. A lot of the members are appointed by the incumbent government, right? Yeah. So the CMA does not act like that. It is not staffed like that. It's staffed by civil servants who are elected based on merit, effectively. They're qualified for it. And you have, between each government, for example, you have basically the entire structure stays the same. Deliberately so. I mean, unless people leave, obviously, but deliberately so to keep that continuity going and to ensure that it's as close to truly independent as possible. Because the last thing you want is, a Secretary of State coming in under one government who has some, sway over the CMA and saying, actually, we want to take the FTC Lina Khan approach, which is to just be like, we don't like big tech, so we're going to do everything against big tech mergers.
Yeah.
The CMA doesn't really have that kind of agenda, nor is it susceptible in the same ways as, say, the FTC to agendas, because its members are not appointed in the way that the FTC members are appointed, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's even more unlikely that the CMA have been influenced, let's say, in the UK by a particular agenda, because if you look at the government that's in power in the UK, it's the Conservative Party, and the Conservative Party is known as the party of big business.
True.
Right?
Same here in America.
And it's as close to the Republican Party as we have, really. Right. So if there was influence, I would actually expect the CMA to just pass the merger and go, no remedies needed. Thank you very much. Good night. So I think that's unlikely. Is it possible? Of course it's possible. Like it's people.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
I'm telling you there's a chance, but I'm telling you that chance is like single-digit percentage.
You shouldn't have given him that inch. I'll take him out.
So, that's all I need. That's getting that snippet ready right now to post on Twitter. Yeah, thank you.
I actually, if I can interject, I did find a real conspiracy, which is I was Googling to try and find the CMA CEO's second name.
Yeah.
It's Cardell, by the way. Eric Cardell. Here's the conspiracy. The other CMA, the Country Music Association, of course, as we all know, also led by a woman called Sarah. Sarah Traher. There you go. You got a CMA.
Sarah. Wow. So we had an interesting question. Well, interesting statement, better yet, from my good brother Sycamore. And Sycamore has been on this situation. Him and Everborn, they just talk about it, and they give so much knowledge on it. And I'm like, I'm impressed, because this whole discussion of the CMA thing and the regulators in general have made a lot of us really focus on stuff we never would have before. But he said Sony hasn't come out and said thank you to the CMA
yet. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they kind of did in that original reply to the provisional findings. They were like, we totally agree with everything that you're saying. He pointed that out before,
too. So do you think, because this was an interesting question that came up earlier, I think earlier today maybe, and he was wondering, Sick, I hope you don't mind me sharing this, he was wondering if Sony had any influence. I'll ask you, Lou, do you think Sony had any influence at all, seeing how the CMA basically moved away from console concerns and said it was cloud-based? Do you think Sony had any influence at all in, like a Jim Ryan, for instance, in kind of getting them to see things their way, or was it all, you think, just the CMA doing their thing?
I think it's did Sony have influence? I mean, I think if you go back, like just taking it a step back, the CMA, when they're doing their analysis, they're looking at all the first-hand information they have, all the documents from the parties, all the submissions from the merging parties, like all of that stuff. And in terms of evidence, quote unquote, that's by far the most persuasive thing that the CMA look at, right? That's the thing they attribute the most weight to. And then there's the third-party submissions, so things that Sony say, or Google or whoever wants to, all the 2,000 submissions they got from gamers, the public,
quote gamer
quote gamers, quote unquote, yeah. And that's weighted. Their merger guidelines say that the weight of that is much lower than anything else. They don't ascribe much weight at all to it. But I think in this occasion they would probably. I think the CMA's initial analysis really dovetailed with Sony's. I don't think that was deliberate, but I think what it probably did was create a bit of a reinforcing cycle. Like the CMA could go, well, look, we're actually really concerned about this, and one of the primary competitor also has the similar concerns. So I don't think Sony, Jim Ryan's there, in Sarah Cardell's ear going, this merger's not good, you should really have a look at this. But I do think that, and I've seen it before in just completely different industries where you have like a primary competitor that just kind of comes out with a submission, and it dovetails very neatly in some respects with what the CMA arrive at in their conclusion. Because ultimately, if you think about the third party submission like Sony's or whoever else's, it's like highly intelligent lawyers behind all of this, right? That are thinking about, okay, if we are trying to advocate for the best interests of this client, where do we think the most successful challenges will be, and how do we think we should present them? So often, like, you could figure that out, right? As a team of antitrust lawyers, you could be like, this is what we'll aim for. This will be what the CMA will have doubts about, or any other regulator. This is the thing that they will worry about. So let's really hone in on that. I think Sony's submission really did that, the initial one. But ultimately, obviously, it didn't make a difference, because the CMA eventually turned around and went, actually, you know what? We got this new data and new methodology for calculating LTV. Actually, we don't have a concern about the console space at all now. But I think the cloud gaming one, I remember when the phase 1 report came out, my first thought was that the console one was pretty weak. I always thought that was quite weak. The one that I always worried for Microsoft was the cloud gaming one, specifically because it's a nascent market.
I think I remember you and Hope both mentioning that on past shows.
So that was the one that always really concerned me, because I've seen firsthand the CMA approach nascent markets where they're very early stage, but they could rapidly grow, and they really, really, really don't like big mergers in that area, particularly where they have significant competitors, or rather one significant participant and then a bunch of other competitors that aren't quite on the same level, which I think, to be fair, you probably have here. I think most people would agree with that.
Right. I mean, to be fair though, you also, in the self-defined, high-end console market, you already currently have that with PlayStation, so it's kind of a moot point in my opinion. But
you do, but then
but it already exists. So
it already exists, and obviously the CMA aren't looking at that, like they're looking at this merge. So
I think I fully agree with you. I think that it's there is that thing where there's people on one side who want to see this and immediately jump to, oh, it's corruption, oh, Sony got in the way, they did all this thing. And then there's people on the other side who want to immediately jump to, yes, Jim Ryan did it, he's such a genius, I'm so glad that he got this shut down, when in reality it's just like, this is what the CMA does. The part of it that confuses me, I think, more than anything else, is I'm surprised that there wasn't any like concessions, that they couldn't think of any way to be like, well, hey, if you do this, this, and this, then
speaking of that,
we can see this going through.
There is an interesting rumor.
Now that you mention the Pactor thing?
Not just him, but it was actually a different one. I forgot where it came from, but basically they were saying that, and I think Patcher. I
think it's Pactor.
Pactor. Thank you. It is Pactor. It's one that he did say, I think, that he touched on, that is supposedly an out for Microsoft, and that is if they acquiesce to not raising the price on Game Pass in the UK or something like that along with that. I wonder how true that is.
I mean, if it is true,
it's practice, so it's nonsense, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a. I don't even know why he's raised that again. That was something that the CMA raised as a concern when they had the console SLC concern.
Right.
So quite why he's bringing this up now is beyond me, because that concern's irrelevant, and actually the CMA don't to my knowledge touch on it in this report. Read the cloud issue. So I don't know where he's just don't listen. Like, people shouldn't listen to Pacta ever on anything. Like, he's not good at this stuff, and he's not.
Man, Luke. But he's been in this long, Luke.
I assume you also don't agree with his another thing I was going to bring up later was he was saying that they could close over the CMA at some point if they needed to, like if everyone else approved.
No, Michael, you can't do that. I see this one getting raised sometimes, and I'll address it if you like, but like, you can't.
Go for it.
There's kind of two limbs to why that just is impossible to do. One is a purely contractual point, which is that they can't just close over prohibitions under the merger agreement, and they can't close over litigation, which is happening with the FTC. Now they could amend and restate the merger agreement to get rid of those conditions, and I think from memory from reading it, there is a clause that allows the parties to bilaterally agree to waive particular obligations, but it's quite a difficult thing to do. And at least if you're trying to amend the merger agreement, that has to go back to Activision Blizzard shareholders, and then there's a whole process of that, which Microsoft may have to engage in a couple of months, but that's unrelated here. So they can't just do that, because the agreement doesn't let them do that. So that's the contractual point. And the second point is that the CMA have already ordered prohibition on this, or they will be ordering formal prohibition in the next few weeks. They'll make what's called a final order. Once they do that, if you try and close your transaction, you are acting in contravention of an order of a regulatory body, and the CMA have significant powers to then, first of all, they'd order divestiture, obviously, and if you don't comply, they can fine you like heavily. I think it's up to 5% of the combined entities' worldwide turnover, which doesn't sound like much, but actually, when you think of the combined turnover of Microsoft and the combined turnover with Activision, that is billions upon billions upon billions of dollars, which would kind of eradicate any value out of this transaction. Right. Like, it would just completely get rid of it. So there's also the fact that you would never, if you're a business, it's corporate suicide to ignore a regulator's order. I mean, you just lose. What do you think the reaction from other regulators will be if Microsoft did that, right? So most likely.
Look, just to kind of, so basically you're saying that if they couldn't pull what they're saying they're going to do with the FTC, they can't say we'll just close it here elsewhere until we can get that situated. They can't do that, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's right.
Wait, now, is it different that they can do it with the FTC? Because they flat out said that's what they would do.
Yes.
Microsoft said that.
Because with the FTC, I think the difference with the FTC is that the FTC have made an administrative order, effectively saying that we don't think that this we don't like the merger, right? Mm-hmm. We think it should be prohibited, but the FTC have to actually, as you know, go to court to get an order, and to get. They also need an injunction to be able to stop you from closing your transaction. Until that point, technically speaking, if you amend your merger agreement, or you agree between you using that clause that I mentioned, you can close over that, and you could just say, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it with the administrative hearing with the FTC, or we'll take it to federal court, and then we'll see what happens with the end result, right? So the difference here is obviously the CMA don't have that kind of waiting period between them saying we don't like this and then having to do an order that says you can't do this, you can't close. The CMA have already done that effectively. Like they're at the end point of that process. So that's why they can close over the FTC, but they wouldn't be able to do it over the CMA or the EU Commission, which is a similar process.
So, okay. That is interesting.
You sound so sad.
No, it's just interesting to learn because I'm like, wow, okay. So I'm learning some new stuff here.
Yeah.
And, it's so interesting how the difference of how these bodies work, these regulators work, I guess.
Yeah,
So
I guess what I'm confused about is how. So you're saying the CMA has jurisdiction outside of the UK? Like they're not able to close the deal in the States and everywhere else and leave Activision as its own operating entity in the UK. So they don't have they have jurisdiction outside of England?
Well, it's probably not quite right to see it as jurisdiction outside of England, because that infers that they have some power to go into America and do X. But for example, if this was two British companies and let's say the CMA, I don't know, passed it, right? But for whatever reason, the merger was investigated by the FTC, then the same principles would apply there. I mean, albeit they could probably close over it in the same way that they could here. But the CMA's, think about it this way: there's things that stop you if you need regulatory consent, like you do here, to your merger, because your merger hits certain laws for certain jurisdictions. You need consent to your merger before you can close under your agreement, because you've drafted the agreement in such a way that means that that's integral to it, right? And you can't then. It's impossible to close in different jurisdictions, because when you close, right? When you complete a deal, you've completed a deal. You can't say, well, we've completed a deal in this jurisdiction, but we haven't completed it here, because the completion of a deal is a legal process, right? It's kind of a moment in time where everything under the agreement that says it's supposed to happen happens, and then you've got two merged entities. You can't merge an entity with another entity in one country and then say, well, over here doesn't count, because that's not how law works. Does that make any sense? I know that's probably not.
Well, what if I'm just trying to think of anything. So you're saying that they, like, even if they completely stopped selling ABK games in the UK and restarted basically the process, and we're like, we're going to try this deal, but as part of this deal, these games are not going to be in the UK because you guys don't want them, apparently. Then even then, the CMA would still have a say in whether or not the deal closed.
Well, the CMA have already done the order, so well, they're just about to do the order, so it's a purely hypothetical question, because the CMA have already issued the order, at which point you have to comply with it. I guess what you're saying is, what if, for example, Microsoft and Activision pulled themselves out of the UK, such that there were no cloud considerations there, or or other relevant considerations, but that's such a hypothetical scenario that will never happen that it's difficult to actually answer, if that makes any sense. So the CMA have never been, or any regulators never ever in the history of competition regulation, to my knowledge, been confronted with that.
So one
because
question,
it's like a nuclear step.
And I guess that's what I was going to ask. I kind of got a brain freeze, but what happens then, Luke, if the EU decides, yeah, we're fine with this, this needs to go through? How does that work with the EU and the CMA, since they're basically both inhabiting kind of the same areas? Or can you enlighten us how that works with that better yet? Because I don't know how that works.
Yeah, well, the EU obviously covers the entire EU, the 27 member states, so all of the EU territory. The CMA is just covering the United Kingdom. If the EU approve, the Commission approve, and let's say they want some behavioural remedies, then and Microsoft are willing to give whatever remedies they are. Then as far as the EU regulator is concerned, the deal's settled and they have no issues. But that doesn't impact on what the FTC and the CMA are doing then, right? Because you've still got.
So you're saying that even if the EU is okay with it and passes it, it still can't go through because the CMA?
Correct.
Wow, that's interesting. So why are there two bodies like that instead of just the CMA covering all of it?
Well, that was because of Brexit, is because the UK left the
is that why?
Or the European Union.
I see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In fact, even pre-Brexit, you still would normally have a condition in your merger agreement or your acquisition agreement to say that the consent of the CMA and the Commission was needed, provided they were relevant markets and you needed to notify under them. But it was just that back then they basically acted in lockstep, except for on very rare occasions. So you wouldn't worry about one coming to some conclusion and the other coming to an opposite conclusion, as you may have here. But the way that this merger agreement is drafted is that it requires, the big three to effectively have consented. So the CMA are part of that, right? So you need them. So that the CMA, as I said from the beginning, I said it on a couple of podcasts, the CMA alone could sink the deal if they blocked it, which is seemingly coming to fruition. But the same could be said about the EU. If the roles were reversed and the EU Commission blocked it, then they could sink the deal as well. So the FTC are always a bit of a weird one, though.
That's it's interesting. I know you told us not to listen to him, but I'm going to use one last blurb from him. So Michael Pachter,
introducing our second guest,
Michael Pachter. He said that he believes a lot of this is political posturing, and that once, let's say, the EU agrees to terms, that the CMA would try to come along eventually to try to be like, oh, well, we got Microsoft to acquiesce and to bend the knee, so to speak, on this or that. Do you see any validity in that, or do you think he's just kind of, again, talking out of his ass? What do you think?
Yeah, he's doing a Pachter again, unfortunately. I don't know why. I don't know why he thinks that. I don't know what I mean is I don't know what basis he has for that. I think he's just spitballing, to be honest. I think he thinks that, okay, if the EU Commission, pass it and get behavioural remedies, that the CMA will look at that and go, yeah, that looks great, actually. He forgets, of course, that the CMA are not on an island on this. They have a very significant ally in terms of their opposition to the deal, which is the FTC. So, the CMA will do what the CMA wants to do. The FTC are doing what they want. I mean, the FTC were the first ones out the gate, right? So be like, no, absolutely not. So, there's not that kind of influence doesn't in today's world doesn't really work in the same way that maybe it did like 10 15 years ago. Like, these are independent regulatory bodies covering concerns in their specific jurisdictions. They're not concerned about what's happening in other jurisdictions because it's not relevant, at least vis-a-vis whether they should block it or anything like that.
Right.
Okay. So
can I?
Yeah,
sorry,
please, go ahead. No, go ahead. Because I have to transition after this.
Sure. So, over here in the States right now, there's a general negative feeling towards the FTC, even outside of the world of gaming, by and large, because of a lot of these blockings and preventing of deals with seemingly pretty weak standings, and because of that, the FTC is being pretty heavily looked at right now, and we're thinking that Lena Khan most likely is not going to be the chairperson for much longer. What's the general sentiment towards the CMA over there right now? I've heard some fairly mixed things in regards to them being very against, bringing in tech and all these other things. I was curious as to what the sort of feeling towards their practices are, because just to put my 2 cents in, I think it's very strange to me that we're seeing such divergent findings from these different regulatory bodies, if I could remember English for a second, in where, like, Japan, which is also a very major market and presumably would have more care about the cloud market since they do so much cloud stuff over there.
Right. Plus the Ubitus.
They passed it. They passed the deal with no concessions, and then now the CMA has blocking it with no concessions, and I'm very confused as to how nobody's asking for anything.
Yeah, although the answer in that case, because I think someone asked me that a few weeks ago, why is Japan just let it go through? But the CMA and the EU and the FTC are kind of really scrutinizing it and looking at it, and maybe not that favorable. And the answer to me, at least, is pretty simple, and that's because Microsoft's presence in the Japanese market is as close to zero as you will get. So they could do many things in the Japanese market that would not get them any kind of foothold in that market. So from a Japanese regulatory perspective, why would they block? Because there's no competition concern at all, because Microsoft are not a huge player in any particular gaming market there. I mean, that's just the facts of where they are, right? Whereas in the UK, they are a much more significant player. Again, in the US, the same. The EU, less. I mean, they are a player there. Obviously, there are a big presence across gaming and multi-game subscriptions and cloud and all that stuff. But everybody knows that Europe is kind of Sony land, which I think is probably borne out by the fact that the EU Commission seems a bit more favourable to the merger in general. I don't think they have quite the same level of concern, because they recognise that Microsoft's market presence isn't that big. And I know Microsoft aren't number one in any of these jurisdictions, by the way. But I think that probably answers why Japan were just like, well, we don't care, because why would we? They're nobody. No offense to Microsoft, but in terms of the market. To go into your question, I guess on CMA, what the vibe is in the UK, I think it's a bit mixed. So I think, at least amongst practicing, lawyers, to the extent our views matter, the sentiments kind of, I think most people understand the analysis that the CMA have undertaken, and there's pretty big deference to the CMA. Like they're very well respected amongst kind of legal counsel generally. Like they work really hard. They're civil servants, and they really rigorously analyze these situations. I mean, they might not come to conclusions that people like or that you think are correct, but there's no doubt that they do an awful lot of reading of documentation.
It certainly took a long time.
Intelligence.
For sure.
So and it took a long time. I think that's one side of it. I think there's other people that obviously are a bit fearful about. I don't even want to say that. I mean, I think some people really don't like regulators, just like the CMA. And don't think they should exist or have the strength that they do. So when they come out with decisions, I suppose, that are somewhat controversial, like this one, then that kind of reinvigorates calls to maybe have a look at the way that they operate and the way that appeals procedures work and all that kind of stuff. And then there are people who really defend that aspect of it because they value the independence and kind of scrutiny of these regulators. So it's a bit difficult to know at the minute because it's all so fresh. But there's a lot of different voices out there. I think it just depends on who you ask.
Luke, did anybody ever tell you that you talk like a lawyer?
Yeah.
I think it's a very relaxing voice. I've been very calm and chilled this whole time by it.
Web Dave says that you got to charge a consulting fee for tonight.
Oh man, yeah. I always say I'll send my bill after one of these.
Hey, so I got this question I want to transition it to with because some of the thoughts, a lot of people were ticked. I was annoyed. Again, I'm just like, I'm so tired of talking about this. Let this be done so they can move on to grabbing other people, acquiring whomever else, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of us were annoyed, right? But I don't think any were more annoyed, or at least expressed it in a way as strongly as Bobby Kotick, Brad Smith, and Lulu Ching Messervy. Brad Smith, who was the vice chair and president of Microsoft, Lulu Ching Messervy, who was the EVP of corporate affairs and the CCO of ABK. And for instance, Kotick said, if you're the UK and you have an incredibly educated workforce with a lot of technical talent, I would think you'd want to embrace a transaction like this, where you're going to see job creation and opportunity. And it really isn't at all about whether it's Sony or Microsoft's platform. It's really about the future of technology. If a deal like this can't get through, the UK are not going to be Silicon Valley. There'll be Death Valley. I was like, ooh. And then you had Brad Smith.
It's a good line.
Yeah, that was a bar. Then you had Brad Smith. He said a statement more or less. I'm not going to read the whole thing because I didn't feel like it. But he's just more or less said that they're still committed to finishing the acquisition, and that they'll be appealing the decision. So I'm going to post this on it. So they're appealing the decision and their disappointment after lengthy deliberations, as it reflects a flawed understanding of how the market works. That's what he said. Now, that was one of his initial ones. He said something much stronger later on in the day, which I do want to highlight as well. And here Lulu had, wrote, the CMA's report today is a major setback for the UK's ambitions to be a tech hub, and we will work with Microsoft to reverse it on appeal. This report is also a disservice to UK citizens who face increasingly dire economic prospects, and we will need to reassess our growth strategy in the UK. Global innovations, large and small, will take note that, despite all its rhetoric, the UK is closed for business. Now, Luke, I'm no lawyer, I'm, or businessman, brother, but that read like a threat to me. So it sounded more like her and all of them were either saying one of two things: that one, that they'll pull out of the UK and close the deal where they're approved, but which you pointed out that can't quite happen, or two, that this will cause job loss in the UK as they pull away from them as much as other companies have threatened to do, or some have done. I know the WhatsApp, for instance, is one who pulled away from the UK because of I forgot exactly the specifics, but I know they pulled away from it.
It was probably Brexit, to be honest. But
it may have been. So, so the question a lot of us were wondering is, what, if Microsoft and ABK decided to fight dirty, right, so to speak, and said, we don't like that you pulled this. We think that this should have gone through. We think you've made a wrong decision here. We're going to fight a little dirtier. And let's say they do this and they decide, okay, we're going to take some jobs elsewhere. There'll be job losses. They'll pull out whatever they can that's legally able that they can do. Do you think they would go that route? And if they were to go that route, how much influence do you think that would have in actually reversing this decision?
Yeah, it's a good.
It's a crazy hypothetical.
Question.
I know it's a crazy.
Yeah, it's a hypo. Yeah. But no, it's still. I like these thought experiments. They're quite fun. What I will say is that the statements from Bobby and Brad Smith, not Sam's, were fine. Like I don't have any issue. I really hated Lulu Chang's comment. Oh, yeah. Specifically. The second paragraph, which is on the screen, which talks about it's a disservice to UK citizens who face increasingly dire economic prospects. I thought that's just total, like, to use a British phrase, bollocks. Like, it's total nonsense, and it's actually incredibly offensive to say that this merger has any impact. That does a disservice to people who are, in a cost of living crisis. What on earth does this do if it goes through for people who are on the breadline, who are struggling to heat their homes? It does absolutely nothing at all. And I think, to be honest, you should be embarrassed by that statement and that was a sentiment here that people were like, really, everybody that I spoke to that read this were just like, what? Like, if you take that paragraph out, if you take that line out and you leave that statement as it is, it's fine. Like, if she wants to think that and like make, like Brad Smith, for example, or Bobby Kotick, like that's kind of by the by. But I just thought it was a bizarre thing to say, to link the CMA's analysis of a merger between two supranational, multi-billion, trillion-dollar companies to people who are struggling to heat their homes. It's just, it was pretty shameful, to be honest. But anyway, the small rant over on that one. On their other stuff, like, I mean, it's a hypothetical question. Look, I mean, I think what they're trying to do, and I think Brad Smith's trying to do this in particular, is that they want to. I don't think these are genuine. Like, I don't think they're inferred threats of doing some action in the UK or inaction. I think to some extent, they probably would look at it long term if the merger doesn't go through in the UK. And say, okay, well, we plan to have, like, you know, this kind of job growth here, and we plan to open this office, for example. Maybe we'll reassess that because maybe it's not the right place to be. But actually, look, the CMA didn't need to block this merger for companies to think that about the UK, to be quite frank, because the UK is in a pretty shit state at the moment. Driven by Brexit and a cost of living crisis. It's not particularly the things that businesses really care about were things related to being in the European Union, you know, free movement of people, of goods, of services, which is all gone. And they also cared about jurisdictions that were low tax for corporations, that had flexible companies law, all of that stuff. The UK is not a low tax jurisdiction. It does not have, I mean, it has okay companies law. Those are the things that Activision are really concerned about, or other tech companies. I think it's a bit of a stretch to say that, UK's closed for business because their regulator has denied a $70 billion merger between two massive companies. Like, I think that's a little bit of a stretch because there are lots of other...
Isn't this like a trend for them, though, that they've been blocking a lot of tech deals lately?
No, not really. They're actually... The CMA don't block that many. They torpedoed Nvidia and ARM, but I think anybody would look at that deal and say, well, that's pretty much every other regulator going around was saying that this is not a good deal. You know, we have really serious competition concerns. So the CMA weren't exactly out of lockstep with other jurisdictions on that. But generally, the CMA are pretty favourable. Like, they're not the FTC. Lena Khan has a self-admitted agenda against big tech, right? She doesn't like it. She said as much. Her entire post, you know, the appointment of a post was effectively based on that philosophy. The CMA aren't like that. They're generally, and this is going to sound pretty weird and pretty funny, I guess, but I would say they're probably the most respected competition regulator in the world because they have balance. So they don't tend
I've been
to
seeing,
be,
but it's good to hear.
Yeah, they don't tend to be agenda driven or anything like that. So I think, you know, the statements that Brad Smith and Bobby are making are, look, I think they're just idle threats, and they want to put some pressure on the CMA, and particularly, I think more than anything, they want to put pressure in the appeals process. They want to get the word out there that this is an irrational.
You land right to where I was thinking with that, because now I wanted to know, how does the appeals process work? And I remember we talked about this. I think it was me and you on Boxing Burgers program sometime way back.
Yeah, I think we did.
Yeah, and I was wondering then, how does the appeals process work? Because I know you said it's a little different in the UK how it works, where it might not be as effective as, for instance, Microsoft taking the FTC to Supreme Court here.
Yeah, it's different, and it's spoiler. It's very difficult. So in the UK, there is an appeals process, and you can go through. You appeal to a tribunal called the Competition Appeals Tribunal, and the issue with that appeals process, I guess, from a perspective of, you know, what is the measure of success if I'm appealing? What do I want? Well, I think most people, when they appeal, they think that the measure of success is, I want to get from my deal being blocked to my deal being allowed through. That's the success I want. And actually, in the UK appeals process, you have to really limit your expectation on that. What you have to think is, I want to appeal, and my measure of success is that I want the Competition Appeals Tribunal. I want CAT to say that the CMA have erred in some respect and get a do-over of what the CMA have done, because the CAT can only review under law under something called a judicial review basis. So they can't do what's called a de novo review of the CMA's decision. In other words, in basic non-crappy lawyer speak, they can't review the substantive merits of the CMA's decision. They don't, CAT don't get all the documents in that the CMA have done and do their own merger analysis and come to a conclusion and go, this is the one you should have made, so this is the one that applies.
I see.
What they do is they say, okay, have the CMA acted irrationally? And I'll talk about that in a moment. Have they acted illegally? Have they done something in contravention of the law, particularly the law that governs what they can do? Or have they had some, has some element of procedure gone wrong here? Have they applied it incorrectly, etc.? I think people, and I see this a lot, people hear irrationality and go, obviously, this is irrational, right? But they don't realize that irrationality is not like just a subjective thing. Like, it's not something that you can see in the real world and you go, that's irrational. It's a very stringent, very high bar test under judicial review, and it means a regulated body doing something so unreasonable that no other reasonable body in the same position would have done the same thing. So in that, like, I'm trying to think of what that would look like, but it's almost as if it would be I can't even think of it. It's that difficult, actually, because it doesn't come up that much. But it's a super high level. So basically, what Microsoft have to do is they have to appeal, and they have to show that the CMA have breached one of those three things, or all of those three things, if they like, or a mixture of them.
Oh no! We actually sent an email to the Sarah who runs the Country Music Association instead of the Sarah.
Yeah. Oh damn!
Everybody get your strong letter the letters out there.
Send it back.
Strong word letters.
Yeah, get them ready.
So then I'll ask this final question on it, and I do want to show it, Brad Smith. Matter of fact, let me try to transition to that. Give me 1 second. I wonder then, Luke. With that being the case, with them threatening, like they said, like we pointed out, or at least alluding to threats, right? Would that influence? How would that influence the arbitrators for the appeal process, or could it at all influence them to overturn what the CMA did? Do you think that would actually be an effective thing that could actually happen, where they say, hey, we're worried this might happen? Because like you pointed out, the CMA is a bit beyond that, I guess, reproach when it comes to what the way we would look at things as far as politics. But would it happen to be that if they did the threat, the looming threat, like we pointed out, that it would actually affect that, where they could actually say, okay, this is our kind of our buy-in to force their hands? Do you think that could be the case?
It's possible, in the sense of if you like, if the competition, if CAT are out there listening, right, and they hear, albeit they're listening to the party that really wants the merger to go through, so you have to take it with a slight grain of salt. But they hear that the party, that party, Microsoft, is so up in arms about the decision and just thinks it's ridiculous. Then in some respects, I guess that does influence you a little bit, because then you come to it, before you've even started your analysis of the appeal, if you're CAT, you come to it knowing that one party's really, really upset about this, right? If that makes any sense at all. Like, you have that kind of influence already happening in your head, that kind of battle. So I don't like threats of like economic retaliation or anything like that. That won't have any impact on CAT at all. Like, they'll just ignore that. It's just posturing. But they will, hear words like, "Oh, you've made a very irrational decision there, CMA," says Microsoft, and they'll think, "Oh, okay, well, maybe that's the avenue that they'll come at with the appeal." And then, sure enough, Microsoft might come, through that avenue. And then they'll have a look at the appeal, which will be very detailed, and they'll have a look at the CMA's process in this review, and they'll analyze it. And then I guess from there, the problem I think that people the thing that people say is that could CAT overrule the CMA, and it's probably not the correct thing. The correct way to describe it, just in this context, because for example, the FTC, they can be overruled by their own administrative judge, which means basically the judge says, or the federal court, either one of them will say, FTC, you've been a bunch of idiots, no competition concerns here, your motion effectively to get this blocked is denied, deal can go on. That's not what happens in this process. What happens is if, for example, the CAT found that the CMA had been acting, let's just say, irrationally, CAT would say, we're going to quash the decision that you've made prohibiting the merger, but it's remitted back to you. So go and do it again. And by do it again, they mean take everything you've done and just fix the element that we've said you got wrong, the irrationality.
That seems like kind of a broken process, though, doesn't it? It feels like it feels like the CMA has very little oversight from that description.
Seems like CAT, yeah. So CAT, well, the thing is that it depends on your view of what you think a regulator should be, because the point, I guess, in some respects, and the EU is fairly similar on this, and the US is not, is that ideally a regulator should be an independent body that has oversight, it has some method of appeal, but it needs to be able to operate in a way that it can't be, compromised, have its mind.
But you've also just
easily.
said that form of appeal is effectively useless.
Well, yeah, it depends on. Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, it depends on your view of like what you think. What you want at the end of it. It's not like the problem is, I guess, for mergers, is that the CMA, that whole process. There's never been a situation where that has happened, where something has been remitted to the CMA and they've changed their mind. They've always come to the same conclusion, irrespective of the error that they made, right? Usually they just fix the error.
Well, it seems like because so CAT, okay. So over here in the States, we have, of course, our systems of check and balances. It's one of the founding principles of our entire government. And so basically what that is like at any time, if somebody else is doing something wrong, one of the other branches can come in and correct the problem. It's a broad generalization, of course, but that's effectively how it works. But it seems like in this particular case, and this is my understanding, and from a single conversation, so I'm sure I'm wrong on some level here. But it seems like what you've said is the CMA makes a decision independent of anything else, and then in order to have them like redo it, they have to prove that the CMA has either broken the law or was acting basically insanely, and only under at least one, you said potentially all of or both of those circumstances, then if they have broken the law, then the solution is to send the decision back to them to see how they're gonna break the law.
You broke the law. Do this over, okay?
Don't do it again.
Don't break the law that way this time now and let them catch you.
Yeah.
Like, what's the? I'm sorry, like, there's got to be some other catch to that,
Luke
right?
said yes.
No, there's no other catch. That's the way it works.
Oh,
which
man.
So strange.
That is the way it works. Now, when I say illegality, what I don't mean that the CMA have taken 5,000 PlayStation 5s and equivalent copies of Ragnarok to make a decision. What I mean is that under the Enterprise Act, which is the piece of legislation that governs all of the CMA's powers, they've done something in contravention of that. Like, they've done something wrong that's actually technically a breach of that act, a breach of the powers that they've been bestowed by the act. So it's not as if it's like I think you hear illegal, and it's like, oh yeah, this, you know, the CMA have done something like really nefarious.
They actually killed a man.
Yeah, they actually
they've done a murder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they did something like totally horrible. It's not that, but I take your point that the system is strange in the UK.
Yeah, from the outside, of course.
From the outside, yeah. But that's why I tried to preface that by saying it depends on your view of what a regulator, particularly one that's investigating what are effectively private transactions that may have consumer impacts, what you think they should be, you know, susceptible to. In the US, you typically have checks and balances for absolutely everything, which is great in some regards, but equally, and I know the FTC aren't doing a great job at the minute, but if they were doing a really great job, you would want them to be able to do the job without a private company or a big public multinational multi-million-dollar company taking them to court and getting them to stop doing the job to protect you, if that makes sense. So that's the position in the UK has always been that there should be a significant amount of deference to a competition regulator, so that, you know, people can't just come along and get decisions changed easily, because ultimately that's not good, you know, for consumers at the end of the day, and it obfuscates and almost you know, obliterates the job of the regulator in the first place. And it's why, for example, in the UK, you know, I've seen this might be one of the questions, I don't know, but I'll address it. People are like, oh, well, the government will just step in because they'll be so concerned, you know, and they'll tell the CMA to do X, Y, or Z in the UK. And it doesn't work like that. You know, it doesn't. That's not how it works. The government can't intervene purposefully because there's a separation of power between all these, you know, between the government and this entity, and you would just you know, again, obliterate the need for the entity if the government can step in at a point. There are circumstances the government can step in, the Secretary of State, but they're public interest situations.
Sorry, this is almost an unrelated question. Hasn't not the president, Prime Minister, haven't you like cycled through a bunch of them over there recently?
Oh yeah, no, our government's a shit show. Don't like, yeah, it's terrible.
I heard it was like 4 or 5 of them or something like that.
Yeah. Even I mean, we've had 3 in the last few years. So under the same government, the Conservative Party have been in power for 14 years. At this point, and in the last few years, they've had 3 separate prime ministers. So yeah, it's not going well for that. That's a separate topic altogether. But I don't think I've
sure it would be a shame for Microsoft to get these prime ministers together and offer them some freedom. No, but so I'll just end it with Brad Smith. His last comment here, he basically said it's bad for Britain, as you can see there. And he said, now that kind of goes in line with what you didn't like what Lulu said. And he said the business community. He says that the investment community and technology sector around the world have been following this case, and the strong message the CMA has sent is not just to surprise everyone who fully expected this acquisition to be approved, but to send a message that I think will discourage innovation and investment in the United Kingdom. And he says he thinks that in a sense, the impact of this decision is far broader than on Microsoft or this acquisition alone. He says something here. He says Microsoft has been in the United Kingdom for 40 years. And how did he put this? He played a vital role, not just supporting business, cybersecurity threats, all these types of things. That you can't get much more veiled threat than this. It says it's probably the darkest day in our 4 decades in Britain. What do you think about that? Was he selling it, put it on a little extra thick right there for you, Luke?
Yeah, of course he was. But if I was him, I'd do exactly the same.
Yeah,
like I would do exactly the same as that. Yeah. So like, I mean, I don't begrudge him saying that. I don't mind his statement, by the way, compared to Lulu's, because Lulu's just a load of shit. But his statement's fine because, look, like, you may agree or disagree with that. I think there are certainly, big corporations that will look at the CMA's decision, particularly in the tech industry, and be quite hesitant to engage in big merger activity because of it. And particularly, they might think that the CMA's decisions in that space are reflective of a more closed tech hub in the UK, and may make decisions on that basis. That's entirely plausible. I don't think what he's saying is implausible, but I think it's always an important thing, particularly as a lawyer. You've got to check the source of this. The source is Brad Smith, who's a high-ranking VP of Microsoft.
Yeah.
So obviously he's not going to like this, and obviously he's going to say things that are, somewhat inflammatory, somewhat veiled. I don't think he said that much when his own country's regulator blocked the deal, or is trying to block the deal, but nonetheless.
That's true. Probably because he feels once they actually go to Supreme Court with it, they'll.
Yeah, well, I think he's.
True.
You know what it is? I think it's more reflective of how frustrated they are with the UK, because I think, as you say, like in the US, the FTC might say we want to shit can your merger, but. Right. Guess what? You've got this system where you can effectively take them to court, their own court or a federal court, and get a judge to overturn it, and just go on. So I think this, Brad Smith's and Kotick's response to this is just anger. I think they're really frustrated by it because they know how bad this is for them.
Yeah.
Like, they know how bad this is for the deal.
I mean, it's money straight out of Kotick's pocket, and in terms of Brad Smith, this would probably be the crown jewel of his career, honestly, if he could get this through.
You don't want to take stuff from Bobby. He doesn't look like a pleasant man.
You don't.
So I think these statements are very reflective of the fact that they're very frustrated with the UK process and the conclusions the CMA have arrived at, and I think they wouldn't be as frustrated if they knew that they could appeal in such a way that, they could kind of push it over the line like they can in the US, because I've no doubt that they can push this over the line in the US, right? I don't think the FTC have a particularly strong case over there.
Right.
But I think, they're probably...
Well, to be fair, I don't think the CMA has a particularly strong case either. It's just that no one cares if they have a strong case or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think the difference is, even in the UK, if you don't have... if you feel like the regulator hasn't made a very convincing argument, tough shit, really. Like, that's the decision that they've made, and now you've really got a hill to climb. So I think, look, I mean, if I was in Brad Smith's position, I'd say the same thing. I'd go at it, because I think that's the thing to do.
Can I ask you one last not legal question?
Sure.
So, well, it's still related. So I think it's pretty clear that you and a lot of other people, honestly, myself included, because I've never really cared about this deal. Like, Activision does nothing for me selfishly, so whatever.
Yeah.
It seems like you're of the opinion that they should take the $3 billion whatever buyout or clause or whatever, and then just cut and run and go and do something else. What do you think? If let's say you're Phil Spencer calls an audible and he's like, "Hey Luke, I need some help." What would be your next play if you were in charge of Microsoft?
Yes.
I may not have asked that very clearly.
No. I know what you mean, though. Yeah. No, I think don't worry, that was clear. I think my next play. I mean, look, I'm going to sound pretty diplomatic here, but
okay.
If you are counsel for Microsoft at this point, if you are their lawyers, then the most you can do at this point is say, look, in the UK, for example, here is the appeals process. Here is what you need to do. This is your likelihood of success based on everything we've analysed. What do you want to do? And if they say we really want to go at it, then you say, okay, we'll get drafting then, right? If you're looking at the broader spectrum of kind of, headspace, PR stuff, then I think the way to do it is that, what you would be telling Phil and others is telling them the things that they're doing now, which is to publicly put pressure on the CMA. I think that some people wouldn't do that and I guess because it's a risky play, because you end up, if you look at the response, for example, from Downing Street today, it was actually quite favorable to the CMA. I think Microsoft maybe thought that if they put pressure on the CMA and came out really aggressively, that it would kind of scare the UK government. But actually, the Downing Street just offered a rebuttal to it and just said, look, the CMA is independent, so what do you want to, what are we going to do?
Right.
Basically.
Sorry, I guess more so what I was asking was like, so if you had your pick of it, the next play after this, because I was already assuming, cut and run, because I think that's seems to be the side of it that you would probably come down on if it was your choice, and I don't even think that that's necessarily wrong. But like, do you cut from this Activision deal and then go to a different publisher? Do you make smaller acquisitions? Do you go to, making third-party exclusivity deals?
Yeah.
Do you do nothing and then do mystery option 4?
Yeah. I think like if it's me, I mean, I always, I think I rest like just on the deal generally, like in terms of like taking the lawyer stuff out of it. Where did I rest on it? I always wanted the deal to go ahead, not because I'm a particularly huge Activision fan, because I'm not, but I'm a big Blizzard fan. But more than anything, I always thought that it would be cool if Microsoft had access to, Infinity Ward and Sledgehammer and all these really super talented studios, and maybe allow them to do something new, or come off Call of Duty on the cycle that they're on.
That's what I was hoping for.
So that's what I was also hoping for. And that's a selfish point. And also selfishly, I just wanted stuff on Game Pass because I'm a Game Pass subscriber. So, so I think we're all agreed on that. But really, in terms of like IP and franchise and all that sort of stuff, Activision was never particularly exciting to me. So if it was me, I would take that money and I would, you know what, this is going to sound silly, but I'd probably focus on the type of thing that Sony are doing, which is to get talented individual studios, like the initial strategy that Microsoft had back when they were initially growing their first party, when they were acquiring, Undead Labs and Ninja Theory, Playground. They were all really exciting acquisitions to me because these are studios that are very talented, that are already growing, but that Microsoft could really accelerate. And you're beginning for most of those to see the results, right? Look, Hellblade 2 is coming, looks incredible. Playground are working on Fable and, another Horizon game. They should be really great, et cetera, et cetera. So I think for Microsoft, if it was me, I'd want to focus on that with a big treasure trove of money. I'd probably be more aggressive in third-party stuff as well, because I think that's something that Microsoft have lacked for a while, and it's something that Sony exploit, very handily. Yeah. They're very aggressive about it, and I think Microsoft should be also aggressive because ultimately, I think that benefits us if they're both really aggressive about that. They're trying to grab these things for their consumers.
I agree. The problem is Microsoft doesn't really care for, soft, I guess, licensing like that. They want the full shebang.
Yeah, which I think is a bit of a shame because if you think about some of the best things that Microsoft have ever done, like in terms of, I mean, at least to me, I always think about things like Blue Dragon or Lost Odyssey, or those kind of games back in the day where they went out and they grabbed these exclusive games.
So you're saying they should look at Japan based on those two?
Yeah, they should. They should.
Square Enix to be petty too.
Yeah, they should. Money hat Square Enix, for example, right? So
what a mess that would be.
Which would be a bit of a mess. But I think honestly I think that for me as a gamer, I'd be better served by them taking that approach. But I think their approach is, if they don't get Activision, Blizzard would still be to try and acquire a publisher or a big mobile arm or something like that to, first of all, get into the mobile market, but also have some kind of asset ready-made where you have developers and franchises and IP and all this kind of stuff that you can just facilitate and then get into Game Pass and get across on the cloud and stuff. So I think that's I don't know what they would do, but that's what I would do from a selfish perspective.
So we had I'll read this last thing and we'll wrap it up because we've already crossed the 2-hour mark. Surprisingly, I didn't think it was going to go that long. So my buddy Mortivore or Mortivori, how do you say your name, Casual? Yeah, we call him Casual, but it's Mortivore. He got that from some game, I think. He says, there is one other way, but it's extremely unlikely, and that is if the king and the royal family steps in. But it's extremely unlikely they don't do that type of stuff.
I'm sorry, do they actually have that power?
I don't think they do, but
Is
there any truth to that, Luke?
I don't think so.
No. I'd personally, I'd love it if King Charles waded into the Hall of
Yes,
Charles
we shall pass
into the
this,
CMA with an Xbox shirt on, wearing a Master Chief helmet.
He rips off his shirt, his jacket, and everything. Master Chief.
Yeah.
Yes, I am an Xbox fanboy. You did not know I'm an Xbox.
It was me the whole time, baby.
I'd love if he did, but the monarchy has a complete separation of power from from Parliament, so it has effective parliamentary monarchical power is vested in Parliament, but that means that the monarchy doesn't have any actual day-to-day power of its own, basically, so it can't do anything at all, other than sit there and be very rich.
Sit there and sit pretty, huh?
Yeah. So no, they couldn't do that. But I would love to see it.
Yeah. Well, hey, so that wraps it up for us tonight. This discussion went on much longer than I thought it would go, but a very, very interesting and very knowledgeable discussion here. Thank you, Luke, for informing us and just giving us knowledge, man, because a lot of this we didn't know. And Mortivore keeps saying Larry.
We're just yelling Larry.
Yeah, he wants them to get Larry. He loves.
Oh, they're a great dev.
Yeah,
they're a great dev.
No, they're the best RPG. He loves them. But yeah,
those are the guys who just did Baldur's Gate 3, yeah.
Yeah, they do a few other ones, I think, too. He always talks about them.
But Divinity.
Divinity Sins and such. But yeah, Luke, man, thank you so much for joining us tonight, brother.
Yeah, no problem.
Man, it's been like I feel like I took a college course tonight or something like that, man.
I do. Yeah.
So, Luke, what would you be up to next? Like, what do you? I know you got the Star Wars preloaded. Are you jumping on that tomorrow?
I'm gonna see what the port is like. I'll jump. Like, I'm gonna jump in for at least half an hour or something like that.
Okay.
I gotta see what it's like.
I gotta check your thoughts on Twitter and see what you're thinking about it. And maybe
post
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I will. I'll let you know. I'm sure I'll love the game. It's just whether the performance will be quite right at the minute. And if that doesn't work, then I'll be back to Dead Space and Resident Evil. But then I've only got like a week, and then I'm away abroad, so I won't really. Although I'll have the Steam Deck with me, so I'll just be playing some indie games. But I'll actually be in the US, funnily enough. So
really.
Yes, I will.
Nice.
But probably not near you guys. Not unless you live in Las Vegas. So.
Viva Las Vegas. Welcome to the city and the country of corruption. No. Yeah, man. So, Luke, could you tell everybody where they can find you? I already have you inside of our description, where they can click right to and go right to your Twitter page and such, and subscribe or follow rather. But tell these good folks where they can find you and support you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for having me on. I really appreciate it and really enjoyed it. And hopefully, it was somewhat helpful. And hopefully, I was at least semi-coherent for 3 a.m. in the morning here. So,
oh, that's right.
Really
just imagine what I'd be like at like 1 p.m. I'd be a horse. So yeah, thank you for having me. And I mean, the main thing is, follow me on Twitter at LukeSteele90. I just post about basically coffee and occasionally law and occasionally games, and also collectible statues, because I'm really into those. So if you like any of that, then go and follow me.
I like all of those things.
And then yeah, I don't have like a YouTube channel or anything, but I am on the Indie Game podcast with the Indie Gamer on his YouTube channel.
Nice.
And we have a monthly Indie Game podcast and 2 other videos as well. So if you are if you're into indie games, and you should be, because they're incredible, and there's one releasing tomorrow, as people should hopefully know, which is Last Case Benedict Fox.
Oh yes.
Go and check us out.
The
And
cassette
yeah,
beasts. Or is it cassette beat or cassette beats? Beasts rather.
Beasts. Yeah,
Yeah, it
Beasts.
came out the other day, right? I heard my boy who was talking about it.
It looks good.
Yeah. It looks pretty cool.
You got to
Supposed
check
to be
out.
really good, actually.
You got to check out Boxenberger's indie community showcase too. He did. It's like 3 hours long though.
It was quite.
Oh, yeah.
Good, though.
It was really good.
Wandering Dutch.
Wandering Dutch, yeah.
Yeah. Really, really good. Full of stuff. So yeah, go and check that out if you like indie games as well. Yeah, quick plug for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, thank you for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Man, Luke, thank you for your
It
time.
was great talking to you.
Absolutely great. Yep, I also plugged your Twitter right there. So. In the
Oh,
chat,
thank you.
so-
That's very kind.
No doubt, man. Danny. So
Yes.
tell the folks what you up to. How your credit is looking, where they can stalk you.
Yeah, credit looking surprisingly good. God. No, yeah. So you can find me on Twitter at Daniel J McG or on YouTube at Daniel McG. That's Daniel the way that it's supposed to be spelt, and then MC capital G. Some people have been spelling Daniel all kinds of different ways, which is surprising to me because I've never seen it spelled in any other way. I just put out a review for Shazam 2 Fury of the Gods this morning, which, yes, I know is a little late, but I really want to talk about it. So I just did a quick little, well, that means like 40 minutes, but it's quick for me, sort of stream of consciousness conversation about what I thought about it. And my next videos I'm working on are How to Save Halo and my 3rd installment of rewriting the DCU, which that one's probably going to take a little bit more time because I'm still cooking. But yeah, should be a good time.
I gotta check out the Halo one. I gotta see what your thoughts are on that.
It's gonna be a minute.
I know you said it'll be something I'll likely disagree with most of it.
Oh, I guarantee it.
I guarantee. I gotta.
I'm gonna start the video with so Umbra hates everything here.
And the the DCEU. I gotta put my boy Truly on that because he loves DC. So I gotta see, maybe check that out and support you on that one too. But yeah,
yeah,
man,
I'd love to have him.
Yeah, I'm sure he would love to come through and listen to it. He loves him some DC. And Danny's, let me get yours and put it in the chat too. Although you are shared on the description. So if you all need to get any of us, if you're not following, which I'm pretty sure most of you are, but if you're not, you can go straight to the description there and you can go and click to any of us and subscribe. And definitely give, I would say, at least Luke a follow for sure. As you can see, I mean, he knows his stuff. My takes would be extremely biased and non-informational. So I'm going to tell you as far as the CMA stuff goes. So, and here's Danny's link there for his Twitter. And if you all have not done so, I'll just say, could you please like and subscribe? I saw a few throughout the night. Thanks, Sick. I saw you a second ago. And whoever else subscribed and who all came through. We appreciate you guys for supporting us. You could be anywhere in the world tonight, but you're here with us. So, of course, you can find me on Twitter, Infinite Umbra Infinite. You'll find me either way. And, man, I'm going to be playing a bunch of things this week. I still got to finish up Ghostwire Tokyo, jumping back on Benedict Fox, probably before I head to work. If not, I'll be on it tomorrow. And then, of course, Star Wars. Or as Fonz Gaming would say, Star Wars. Because he said Starfield like that. Anyway, can't wait. It's going to be a good game. Thank you all for joining us. And I still have this sign off I'm trying to learn and do, Luke. You let me know what you think about it. So this is my sign off, y'all. I don't want anybody don't laugh at me too hard, but this is my sign off. Here we go. In a world where you can choose to be anything you want to be, choose to be good to each other. Later, everybody.